All right, let's jump into today's top headlines coming out of India. We're going to go deeper than just the headlines, try to pull out some of those interesting nuggets.
I think you're right. I think there are a lot of really interesting things happening today between sporting wins and economics, even space exploration.
So, first, how about we start with that big cricket win, India over England in that first ODI?
Mm. Yeah, that was pretty exciting, especially with Shubman Gill. You had those leg cramps he was battling through and still managed to hit 14 boundaries.
14 boundaries with leg cramps. That's pretty impressive, though I do have to say I'm a little bit worried about Virat Kohli being out with that knee injury, especially with the Champions Trophy coming up.
Yeah, I think Kohli's fitness is definitely going to be a factor going into that tournament. And speaking of factors to consider, we should probably talk about the stock market that dipped today. The
Yep.
Sensex closed at 65,430, and the Nifty was down as well.
Seeing numbers like that always makes me a little uneasy. Do you think this could be the start of a larger bearish trend, or are we maybe overreacting a bit?
It's really hard to say, and especially right now with the Reserve Bank of India about to make their announcement on monetary policy, everyone's kind of waiting to see what happens with interest rates.
Yeah, so we've got this economic tension brewing. And then on the international stage, we have Prime Minister Modi getting ready for that visit to the White House, trying to solidify that India-US partnership. Seems pretty straightforward, right?
Well, on the surface, yeah. But then you have the U.S. revoking the sanctions waiver for India's development of the Chabahar port in Iran.
Okay, so how does that play into Modi's visit, this whole Chabahar port thing? It seems like the U.S. is sending mixed signals, doesn't it?
Oh, it definitely raises a lot of questions about just how complex geopolitics can be. This port is a pretty big part of India's strategy in the region, especially when it comes to connecting with Afghanistan and Central Asia. So this decision by the U.S. could really have a ripple effect across that whole area.
Yeah, it's kind of a reminder that everything's connected in a way. One decision over here can impact something totally different over there. And speaking of ambition, I think it's time to look up because India is doing some really cool stuff with space exploration. Those upcoming Chandrayaan-4 and Gaganyaan missions.
I think those missions really show India's dedication to science. Chandrayaan-4 is going to be bringing back those moon rock samples, which could give us more insight into the formation of the moon. And then Gaganyaan, that's going to be their first manned spaceflight. Pretty big deal.
I've always wondered what's so special about moon rocks. Why are scientists so interested in them? And when it comes to the manned mission, what part of that excites you the most?
Well, moon rocks are kind of like time capsules. They hold clues about the early solar system, and they can even help us understand how the Earth itself formed. As for Gaganyaan, I think for me it really shows how much India's technology has advanced. It's a point of national pride for them, and it shows that they can compete on that global stage.
That's pretty cool. I hadn't thought about how space exploration ties into national pride. How do you think this will play out on the world stage? It's not just about science, right?
Oh, definitely not. India's achievements in space are going to have an impact on geopolitics, too. It could lead to more collaboration, with other countries wanting to partner up, or it could create more competition as everyone tries to stay ahead in the space race.
So it could go either way, more cooperation or more competition. It'll be interesting to see how that all develops. But for now, let's come back down to earth literally, and let's talk about that Bengal Global Business Summit. They managed to get over 90 trillion rupees in investment proposals. That's a huge number.
Yeah, it really shows how much confidence there is in West Bengal's economic potential. If those investments are managed well, it could mean lots of new jobs, better infrastructure, and a stronger economy for the whole state.
It sounds pretty promising, but what does it actually mean for the everyday person living in West Bengal? Will they actually see improvements in their lives because of these investments?
Well, that's what we hope for, right? Ideally, those investments should translate into things that people can actually see and use, like better roads, improved transportation, and access to those essential services. It's all about making sure that everyone benefits, that the prosperity reaches everyone in society.
So it's not just about getting the money. It's about making sure those investments actually help the people. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it takes really careful planning and a long-term vision. The government has to implement smart policies, focus on building up their infrastructure, and make sure they're investing in education and skills training so that everyone can participate in this growth.
Sounds like they've got a lot to juggle.
Yeah.
But let's shift gears here completely and talk about Prime Minister Modi's Pariksha Pe Charcha event this year. I think it's really interesting that he's got Sadhguru, Deepika Padukone, and Mary Kam on the panel.
It's a pretty diverse group, and I think that's the point. They're bringing in people from different areas like spirituality, entertainment, and sports because they're acknowledging that exam stress isn't just an academic problem. It affects students' mental and emotional well-being and even their spiritual side.
I really like how they're taking this broader approach, especially in a culture that often puts so much emphasis on academic success above everything else. What kind of message do you think this sends to students?
I think it tells them that success isn't all about grades. It's about feeling good about yourself, following your passions, and using your talents. These panelists, they've all found their own ways to be successful, and they can offer a different perspective on what it really means to succeed in life.
They're showing that there are lots of paths to finding fulfillment, and I think that's such an important message for students to hear. Today, we've covered so much, from cricket scores to global politics, space exploration, and even student well-being. It's amazing how all these different things are connected in a way.
It just shows you how many different sides there are to India's story. It's a country that's constantly changing, facing some tough challenges, but also going after some really big goals.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey today, hasn't it? We've really gone deep into all the different things happening in India, the good, the bad, the complicated, the exciting.
And we've seen how it's all connected, things happening inside India, things happening around the world. It just goes to show you that staying informed about things that might seem far away can actually help you understand what's going on closer to home.
Exactly. But before we wrap up, I want to go back to those space missions for a second. Chandrayaan-4 and Gaganyaan, they really capture the imagination, don't they? What do you think is behind this push for India to do more in space?
Well, you can't ignore the historical context.
Yeah.
India has a long history of scientific exploration and a real curiosity about the universe. So these missions are kind of a continuation of that. But I think there's something more to it as well.
Something more. Like
Yep.
what?
I think it's a statement, a way for India to show off its technological capabilities. It's like they're saying, hey, we're here, we're capable, and we're ready to contribute to what humanity knows about space.
So it's about expanding our knowledge, but also about showing the world what India can do.
Exactly. And let's not forget the practical side of things, too. Space exploration often leads to new technologies that can be used here on Earth. Things like satellite technology, better ways to communicate, even new materials. These all have an impact on everyone.
It's amazing how reaching for the stars can actually make our lives better here on Earth.
It is kind of a paradox, isn't it? The pursuit of knowledge for its own sake can actually lead to solutions for some of our biggest problems. And I think that's what makes these headlines from India so interesting.
We've talked about everything from a cricket match to the stock market, from international relations to the vastness of space. It's been quite a deep dive.
It really highlights how interconnected everything is. Whether it's a sporting event, the ups and downs of the economy, or a country's ambition to explore space, it's all part of a bigger story, a story about human effort and aspiration.
Well said. And for our listeners out there, as you follow India's journey, I want you to think about this. How might India's growing presence in space change the world? Will it lead to new partnerships or maybe more competition? And how could all of this affect our lives in the years to come?
Those are some great questions to think about. And it just shows you how important it is to stay informed and engaged in the world around us.
Absolutely. So until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep looking deeper than just the headlines to find those amazing stories that shape our world.